Hello, my name is Sumnus, and today I'm going to be giving my rankings for the 23 MCU movies. Now, before we begin, put your thoughts on my rankings in the comments down below. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Number 23, Thor the Dark World. Now, there are a lot of things going around about this movie. It's a bad movie. It's the worst movie. Yes, it is the worst movie, but it is still not a bad movie per se. While, yes, it didn't hit par with the standard MCU has set with one of its great movies, it's not a bad MCU movie. As a standalone movie, it would still be a decent movie. It's just that my main problem with this movie was Malekith, the villain. His arc just didn't work with the movie. His entrance was really abrupt, his entrance was out of a book, and his ending was three humans with a tripod beating him. So he just didn't have an arc that a good villain needs to have for a movie to work. Next, my second most problem with this movie was Loki. They did a good job with him, making him comical and distraught about where he is, but at the same time, him dying again just didn't work well with the movie. For the second time in this MCU saga, in Thor Dark World, he died again. And the first time, okay, it worked. We saw in Thor, he fell off the Bifrost, and then in Avengers, he showed up, and in Thor end credits. He worked. But now, the second time, doesn't work. So, that is my main problem with the movie. The other problems are the jokes. We saw Chris Hemsworth in Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame. We saw his comical side. We did not get to see almost any of it in this movie. That was one of the bigger problems with this movie. We didn't get to see any jokes other than the coat rack being worthy of Mjolnir. There was no improvisation, funny sides of Chris Hemsworth like we saw in Thor Ragnarok. So my main problem with the movie.
Number 22, Iron Man 2.
Now, again, this one was hard to put on my list. Where do I put it? Again, the main problem with this one was the villain, Whiplash. He, again, did not have the best of arcs. He didn't seem like a big villain, per se. He just didn't be where he needed to be. His weapon was good. He had the potential to be something great, but he just didn't meet it. He's just some Russian guy who found these arc reactors and made whips. So that didn't work out as well as I would have wanted that to. I like Justin Hammer, he was pretty good, but again, it just didn't be where it needed to be for Tony Stark to succeed in this movie. I like how it established the Tony Pepper relationship in that movie. Considering it was only the second MCU movie, they did a decent job with it. Now, the biggest thing with this movie was Iron Man's chest. Where did they come up with that? I mean, they show that his arc reactor is killing him, but they never even mentioned that in the first Iron Man movie, which is one thing, kind of like a continuity thing, that I had a little problem with this. Not many people had a problem with this. It's not that big a deal, but at the same time, I wish they did a little better job at that, maybe mentioning it in the end credit scene of Iron Man, something.
Number 21, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Now, this movie was difficult. I like how they had introduced the continuity. In the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, we saw Quill was not all human. And this movie did a good job of showing he had godly powers and all that, but it was just kind of stuffed with characters almost. Mantis was okay, I mean, wasn't really sure how to think about that, but okay, they did a decent job. And then Ego, being Chris's dad, just, right? Now, Quill is supposed to be a fun guy who always is cracking jokes, and they did a good job with this movie. One thing I would have liked to see more was a little more of Rocket's personality, and we may get to see more of that in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, because in this movie, we didn't get to see anything about his past. We just heard that, okay, he was genetically modified, all that stuff. That's one thing I would have liked to see more. And Ego, the planet, just seemed a little just thrown in there because they needed to. I wish they had a little better arc for him and explained him a little more. but what's done is done. The movie's there, and some of us are kind of glad it's there, some of us are not. I think it's a decent movie.
Number 20, The Incredible Hulk.
Now, The Incredible Hulk is a interesting movie. It was a decent movie. I liked what they did with the villain. This one had a good villain. It had a good arc. Abomination did pretty good. I just didn't like how they followed up on the movie. This made a huge continuity thing. It just they didn't follow up about the end credit scene, the second one, not Tony Stark, the other one where they show the gamma brain guy. And so I feel like they could have done a better way about going about it. Changing the actor didn't mean have to ignoring the movie completely. So that was my problem with the movie. The movie itself was pretty good. I liked how they show him turning into Hulk, all that good stuff. That was a pretty good movie. I just think they could have followed up on it better, maybe created a second one that was better. I don't know. We may see more of that in phase 4. But for now, let's just hope this is not the end of the Hulk.
Number 19, Captain Marvel.
Now, Captain Marvel. This one, I think, in my opinion, is a very decent movie. It's not bad, it's not good either, it's just kind of in between there. Now, it just didn't have her powers established well enough. So I liked how they did her history, but they didn't explain her friends that well, and that just didn't add up to me. Why did she have all these powers and yet she couldn't beat people? Like, she had the power to burst the spaceship in half, yet she struggled to beat these small itty bitty people. It just didn't make sense. She couldn't beat them. So that was my problem with that movie. I liked how they did Nick Fury, but my problem with Nick Fury was the Fluffykins, or whatever, that cat, right? My problem with that is he said that in Captain America Winter Soldier, last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye. Now, that was a pretty cool thing to say. Okay, that's pretty cool. Oh, look, he trusted somebody, he lost an eye. Okay, that's pretty cool. But then here, he didn't even it wasn't even a somebody. It was a some animal, right? It was a cat or whatever it's called, right? And all he did was scratch him. So it's not like he betrayed that the cat betrayed the trust. Just scratched him. So I feel like they could have done a little better follow up to that than they did with the cat.
Number 18, Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ant-Man and the Wasp was a really good movie. I liked what they did with the quantum realm. It established the gateway for Endgame to take place with the time travel, all that stuff. But it's just, I don't know, it just didn't have, it had the potential to be a really good movie. The first Ant-Man was a really good movie. It had the potential to be a good movie itself, but it didn't meet that standard. It was pretty good. It was nice continuity. They followed up on the first movie pretty well, but the way they did the Wasp and the wings and all that stuff, I don't know, it just didn't feel as good as they could have done with it.
Number 17, Thor.
In my opinion, this is the most underrated MCU movie. A lot of people have this at the bottom of their list saying it's terrible. I don't think so. I think that it was a pretty good movie. And if you see, after this list, the movies on this are all hits, smash hits. So this one, I think, deserves to be in the spot. It is a good movie. I liked how they showed some comedy and Bring Me Another, all that stuff. It was funny. They did that well. I liked how they did Loki. Loki was a good character. They established his arc well as a villain, but with good reason. Also, kind of being a hero villain mix of that. And they also did pretty good with the Friends arc. The Jane Foster, I think they did a good job with her as Thor's love interest. So I think they did a pretty good job with that movie.
Number 16, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Now, Spider-Man Far From Home was a very good movie. It was a good follow-up to Endgame. I liked how they show Tony's death impacting Peter in a huge way. This one, I liked how they did the villain. Although I feel like they could have done Mysterio a little earlier, although he is a Spider-Man villain, so I guess that worked. It's just that that villain, being there since Civil War and appearing now after 7 or 8 years, it just didn't make sense. But he is a Spider-Man villain that can't pop into an Iron Man movie, so yeah, I think they did a pretty good job with the villain in that movie. I get that they needed to put MJ in there because that is how it is in the comics, but it just did feel a little random or thrown in there after Liz in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. So, I don't know, that one was a little off, but I think the rest of that movie was really good. I liked how they show Nick Fury operating from the shadows and the end credit scene showing him on that spaceship. So, I think that movie was really good. It established a way for Spider-Man 3 to be the best movie ever in MCU if they do it right. Or maybe it could not be the best, but it will be a very good movie.
Number 15, Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, my favorite part about that movie was Benedict Cumberbatch. He was a very good actor for Doctor Strange. They did a good job with him, being very funny, a little egotistic. They established him very well. I also liked how they did Caecilius. And I liked almost everything about that movie. I feel like they could have done a little better establishing the Ancient One's past, but then again, they also called her Ancient One, so I guess they could just say, okay, she's ancient, and leave it at that. So that's okay to say. I don't know what to really think about that, but it's only one character. I liked how they did Mordo in the end credits scene, so that established a really good way for Mordo to appear in Doctor Strange 2. And yeah, it was a good way. Dormammu have come to bargain. The end fight was awesome, so yeah. I think they could have dialed down the Time Stone's ability a little because it just kind of feels that they could just do that all the time. Every time they have a problem, hello, I've come to bargain. They could just do stuff like that all the time. So maybe dial that down a little, but all in all, that was an awesome movie.
Number 14, Ant-Man.
Now, Ant-Man was an awesome movie. It really allowed Scott Lang to enter the MCU in a fashionable way. I liked how it didn't completely interact with the other universe. It was kind of like his own universe until the Falcon battle. But other than that, it was kind of his own universe, having fun, fighting Darren Cross, all that. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job with that. And my favorite part from that was Falcon versus Ant-Man. They did a really good job with that, showing how Ant-Man was just still kind of into this, still learning how to use a suit. So I think that was pretty cool. I liked how they did the villain. Darren Cross was a decent villain. He wasn't the best villain. Now, I think that overall this movie was a funny, serious mix of the two movie that established Scott Lang's arc really well.
Number 13, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Now, Spider-Man Homecoming is a very, very interesting movie, difficult movie to place on my list. It is a good movie. It's kind of like a their movie. It wasn't at the top of the list, but it's certainly not at the bottom of the list either. So I kind of put it in the middle. So this movie, there wasn't really many problems with it. The villain, Vulture, was pretty good. He was decent. I liked how they showed that twist of him being Liz's dad. And I think it really worked out well with the villain. Although, I think that maybe they could have established Peter's relationship with people around him a little better. So his relationship with Aunt May, all that, they could have done that a little better. I think that they still did that a pretty good job with it. I liked how they showed Ned as his guy in the chair. So they did a pretty good job with that.
Number 12, Black Panther.
Now, this movie was one of the better MCU movies. It showed their potential to really, really make blockbuster movies. It showed a lot of diversity. It was really good with that kind of thing. Really, really was one of the best MCU movies in my opinion. Thing is, there are at least 12 or 13 really good movies on this, so it's not near number one, but believe me, it is one of my favorites. So, that one, I don't know, there was just something about the way they established Killmonger as a Avenger person who kind of wanted to avenge his father's death. That was a really good arc for Killmonger to have. I also liked how they showed Chadwick Boseman as as a young adult who was trying to fit in to the Black Panther thing, who was trying to become king, but at the same time trying to balance his warrior love life, all that kind of good stuff. So I think they did a good job with that movie, and they can continue doing that.
Number 11, Iron Man 3.
Now, Iron Man 3 was a very serious movie, in my opinion. It was not as comical toned as the previous Iron Man movies, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2. It showed a more serious side of Tony that we hadn't yet got to see. Showed his post Avengers stress and all that kind of stuff. And they did a good job with that. Aldrich Killian, I think they could have done a little better job with his arc. They didn't really establish his character too well, but I think the movie itself made up for that. My favorite part, of course, was the Iron Man, all of them coming together to fight extremists. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, so that movie was really good. It established Tony's and Pepper's relationship and kind of capped it all off with that. Did a really good job with that. All in all, I think that movie was a really good MCU movie, and yeah, it really established Tony's arc.
Number 10, Captain America the First Avenger.
Captain America the First Avenger was a very good movie. The first half of that, if you put the first half of that movie, I would put them higher on this list. My main problem with that movie was how they kind of montaged the entire World War II part of that. So I feel like if they added a little more detail to that area, this would have been a really good movie. I did like how they showed Bucky falling and all of that. That was a really good job they did. They established his relationship, and I think they did a very good job. One thing I would have liked to see a little better was the Red Skull being a more prominent villain. I mean, he wasn't as strong as you would have hoped. They kind of finished him off a little too haphazardly. Just suddenly they whisked him off to Vormir, so I think they could have done a little better job, maybe Captain America finishing him and then he touched the Tesseract or something like that, not just Captain America never beating him. So, yeah. And also the way Captain America went into the ice. He still had complete control of the plane, he could have just flew it around. They showed in Captain America Winter Soldier he's fully capable of jumping out of a plane, could have crashed the plane, taken out one of those bomb planes. So many other options. So I think they could have done that part a little better, that entire airplane battle thing. But other than that, that movie was one of the best MCU movies.
Number 9, Avengers Age of Ultron.
Now, Age of Ultron was a very, I don't know how to put this. It was a very good sequel to Avengers. It kind of followed up. It shows how they were all working as a team. The Natasha Bruce relationship was a little just there. It was like kind of popped on us. But other than that, I think that they really did good. It was a good job making Hawkeye become a big part of the MCU again. In the first movie, he just spent half the time being brainwashed, so it did a good job giving a comeback for Hawkeye. Established his arc very well, and I think that overall, they did a pretty good job with that movie. I liked how they showed Tony as a reckless guy who's constantly trying to do more stuff, and Bruce as the guy who's willing to follow, so they did a pretty good job overall with that movie.
Number 8, The Avengers.
Now, The Avengers was the movie that ever since 2008 we had been waiting for. That movie was that one thing that we could just not stop waiting for. Now, this movie was very good. I liked how they showed Loki as the main villain and how they introduced Thor and all that kind of stuff. But again, as I said in Avengers of Ultron, Hawkeye spent half his time brainwashed, which kind of made him a kind of shaky addition to the team, right? Like, he had Captain America had never met Hawkeye, like his real Hawkeye before, and he just said suit up, and then now they're all following him and all that. So could have done a little better with Hawkeye. As in Hawkeye, they did a really good job with all of the characters. They did really well with them.
Number 7, Iron Man.
Now, this movie was the first MCU ever to come back in 2008. That was the first MCU movie. Now, this one was obviously the first one, so they're still trying to figure out how to do this, but I think they did a really good job. It's number 8 on my list, and considering all the other movies, they really did a good job with this one. Now, the villain in this was pretty good. I liked how they showed Obadiah Stane, and I also liked how they showed the 12 rings and all that, so 10 rings, and it was pretty good. So, I think that the one thing that they could have changed, in my opinion, was showing Pepper a little more, like, into the story, rather than just as the assistant. So, yeah, other than that, I think that they did a really good job with this movie. Yeah.
Number 6, Thor Ragnarok.
Now, Thor Ragnarok, this, in my opinion, is the best by far out of the Thor trilogy. Now, this movie showed the funny side of Chris Hemsworth. We got to see a lot of jokes. It reintroduced the Hulk into the MCU, and it really showed a new side of a lot of characters. Showed a new side of the Hulk, new side of Thor, and new side of Loki too. He was more of a good guy in this movie. So I think they did good. Um, I like how they did Hela as this powerful person who draws power, and they did a really good job with her arc. It was kind of popped on us a little out of nowhere, but then again, they do that in a lot of MCU movies, so we're kind of used to it by now. So I think they did a good job with that movie overall, and I liked how they showed losing Mjolnir as like a emotional part of Thor, and yeah, I liked how they did the soundtracks in this, the Led Zeppelin while Thor was fighting all those undead people. So they did a good job with that movie.
Number 5, Captain America the Winter Soldier.
In my opinion, this movie is the most rewatchable movie in the MCU there is. So it really was a really good combination of spy, comical, all that stuff that a movie needs to have. It combined it into one movie, and it was a spectacular movie. I like how it showed the downfall of Shield, showed Hydra, and it was really good. One thing I would have changed in that movie was Arnim Zola. I didn't really understand that part. Just Arnim Zola kind of was like kind of there to show a connection between him and his past life. It was amazing how they introduced Bucky back into the MCU. So overall, they did a really good job with that movie. Obviously it was a smash hit, so it got what it deserved.
Number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy.
This one was a gamble from the MCU's part, and I think it's safe to say that we're all happy they decided to do that. Who would have thought that a talking tree and a talking raccoon could have become everybody's favorite characters? But it worked, and now we're all glad for that. So, this movie, one thing, again, as I would have changed, is Ronan, maybe giving him a little more power. But other than that, this movie, there's honestly nothing I would have changed from that. It's all really good, not much to say about it. Quill, they did a good job with him as a funny jokester who likes to call himself Star-Lord, all that. It was a good movie. And also, the one thing I would have changed, other than Ronan, and even then Ronan was a pretty good character, one thing I really would have liked to change was Drax being a little more powerful. He was just the guy with the knives, who's literal all the time. So, obviously they called him Drax the Destroyer, but other than calling him the Destroyer, he never really did anything but throw knives. So, they could have changed Drax to be a little more powerful, but other than that, this movie was a really good movie.
Number 3, Avengers Infinity War.
Now, Avengers Infinity War was the climax of the MCU. This was the movie where it all led up to. And I think that they did a really good job of this. It brought back almost everybody right? It showed almost everybody. Spiderman coming back in, Tony, all of that. I liked how they showed his new nanotech suit. That was amazing. And how they showed how Captain America, Black Widow, Falcon, they'd all been hiding. So I think they did a really good job with that movie. And the biggest thing in this movie that was awesome was Thanos. He was amazing arc. They had been leading up to for this part with Thanos for years. He had been hiding in the shadows, playing the pawns and all that. And then he comes in now for this amazing movie. This one truly was the best or one of the best MCU movies.
Number 2, Captain America Civil War.
Civil War. It was amazing. It showed the Avengers splitting apart, some of them coming back together. It was amazing. I liked what they did with Bucky, showing how he was trying to go straight, freezing him at the end. They just did an overall job. Established Peter's arc really well, showing how he just wanted to help. And it showed Ant-Man. And Ant-Man, it did a good job of setting up Ant-Man and the Wasp. And while Ant-Man and the Wasp wasn't the best movie, this did a really good job of setting it up. So I think this really set up everything from the MCU. It just kind of led to this, and this exploded apart. So this one was an amazing movie. The airport battle was fantastic. Repulsors versus Cap's shield, amazing. All of it. Just really one of the best. And now, before we get to the number 1, I'd like to say please comment down below. Say what you think of my rankings so far. Please share this video with your friends. Make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. And tell me, do you think I was right? Do you think I was wrong? Tell me in the comments.
Number 1, Avengers Endgame.
Now, we all probably knew that it would come down to Avengers Endgame being number 1 while you watch this video to make sure I put it there. Some of you may think I'm crazy, but yeah, I liked it that much. All of you probably did too. It was the best movie in my opinion. Not just the best MCU movie, maybe the best movie I've ever watched. The entire Infinity Saga led up to this movie, and it delivered. It showed the Avengers Assemble moment. That Avengers Assemble moment we had been waiting for since 2008, and this finally gave it to us with all the characters of the MCU there and ready to fight Thanos. And I think that they did a good job with establishing Thanos. He had already been there, and it showed how he was just never giving up, keep persisting to give the universe back its resources or whatever, and did pretty good. And I liked how they showed the I Am Iron Man. That was a very good way to end his arc. It really, really worked well, showing that this was what started the MCU and that's what ended his life. So that did pretty good with that. And the one thing that I wasn't really sure what to think of was the Cap and the Cap being old and marrying Peggy and all that. That just kind of felt out of the blue in my opinion. So it's the only thing that maybe they could have done a little differently with the Cap and Peggy, because that kind of made it weird with Cap being with Sharon, who was technically his niece. So that was just a little odd. Other than that, that was the best MCU movie, the best movie I've ever seen, and it probably will stay that way. Alright, thank you for watching this video, and please like, share, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one.